So you finish your Pilates certification, congratulations. Now what? What do you do? How do you make yourself hireable? How do you work with the best studios? How do you figure out how to get paid fairly? In this video, I'm gonna give you all my tips for things that I think you should do as soon as you finish your certification program. And these are some non-traditional things that I wish I would have known straight out of my training program. So I'm gonna give you some advice for how I would navigate that kind of awkward phase after you finish certification, but before you fully onboard and get into your groove of teaching. In case you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm Morgan, LA-based Pilates instructor, and I love talking about all things Pilates on this channel. That includes follow-along workouts, tips for perfect form, and instructor advice. So we're gonna get into some tips that I would recommend for Pilates instructors, because as someone who posts content online, I get a lot of really great questions from you guys, and a lot of them have to do with what do you actually do once you finish your training program to make yourself competitive in a very competitive market? So let's get into it. Not enough people in the Pilates industry talk about the financials of it all. And this was the hardest part about navigating it as someone who has never really been an entrepreneur or worked for myself. So the first piece of advice I'm gonna give you is to get yourself an EIN or a sole proprietorship. This will be crucial when it comes to taxes at the end of the year, and I'll explain why. I personally don't think you necessarily need an LLC. When I worked with my tax person, which you should consult an expert. This is like generic advice that I'm giving you. He said I didn't really need an LLC for what I was trying to do as long as I had a separate business account and then I had my sole proprietorship, which gives me an EIN. Giving yourself an EIN allows you to deduct Pilates related expenses out of your taxes at the end of the year, essentially. So, or your income that your business is making at the end of the year. So things like your certification program, and we know that's thousands of dollars right there. Your certification program, mileage on your car, any sort of training, the hours that you have to do as a part of your certification program, so like those privates that you schedule, things like that, anything that's related to you creating your Pilates business and being a Pilates entity, you wanna have an EIN for that. That has just helped so much at the end of the year when it comes to taxes, because some studios will have you paid as W-2 versus 1099. 1099, you're taking full cash, like whatever they say they're paying you, whether it's $50, $40, you're taking $50 and you're expected to pay at the end of the year on taxes. That can really screw you over if you're not prepared, but those deductions will really help. So first piece of advice, absolutely get yourself an EIN. You don't have to wait until you finish your certification program, I don't think. As soon as you start to think about it, create an EIN for yourself and start to track all of your relevant Pilates business expenses. Not clothes, like I said, talk to a tax person, but related Pilates expenses like equipment or props or even camera equipment if you're gonna do YouTube or things like that. So have an EIN for your Pilates business. That is so, so crucial. Second piece of advice is to get liability insurance for you as an individual, as an instructor. A lot of studios will require you to have this. That's kind of how I first learned about it when I started applying places. But when I was doing like pop-ups for like friends or family or like people in the park, I absolutely should have had insurance, because if something went wrong in those settings, I would have had no protection. So definitely make sure that you have individual insurance for you that follows you wherever you teach. So if I do a pop-up in Atlanta or in Miami, I have insurance that will cover me for wherever I'm teaching. So definitely get some sort of fitness liability insurance. Now let's talk about making yourself hireable, because this will be crucial in helping you figure out where to teach. Like a lot of people finish their certification program and they're like, okay, where do I start? I can go around to studios in the area, but it is so important for you to begin to build your own brand so that you start to attract some of these studios that you may want to work at. I've taught at a bunch of different studios now. 80% of them have found me on social media, have reached out to me, and that's how I've been hired. So I would encourage you to start to build your own brand, whether that's creating a new Instagram account or a YouTube account or whatever. Start to build your brand on social media. This is also a good opportunity for you to get some of those kinks out in terms of how you cue, how you edit videos, how you want to showcase your talents online, things like that. So like start early, start to build a social media presence. In today's day and age, honestly, you having social media is a non-negotiable. It is just a way that you are going to build relationships with clients. It's how a lot of times studios will find you. So I do think it's important that if you want to make yourself really marketable as a Pilates instructor, that you have some sort of presence on social media. A thoughtful presence. I'm not saying you should just go like willy-nilly and just post whatever, but you should have a strategy to how you want to represent yourself online. One thing to think about as it relates to building your social media presence, you can think about, do you want to cater more towards instructors or do you want to cater more towards the average person? Do you want to make Pilates more accessible? through your own social media? Or do you want to kind of be instructor guru where you're showing different flows? That's kind of like the direction I took if you want to look at my Instagram. But my Instagram is definitely a lot more of like flows and like tips for instructors and like why I do certain things in the way that I teach. So decide what audience you want to cater to and start to build your brand online. This will be huge for making you hireable. It's something that you can kind of use it as a little portfolio to show people examples of how you teach or how you cue. So definitely think about starting to build on social media. I also think YouTube could be crucial to your instructor journey. This is something that I wish I would have done earlier, even before you get hired at a studio. Just starting to film videos on YouTube, you can watch them back to kind of understand maybe where you're good at cueing things, not so good at cueing things, how clear you are, how you want to improve. So it can be such a great tool to make you a better instructor. So just start posting your flows, posting workouts free on YouTube. I think is a great way to grow, to make yourself marketable, and just overall improve as an instructor because it gives you good practice where you're forced to cue even if you don't yet have your audience or your clients that you're cueing for. This next piece of advice is honestly probably the most important thing that I will tell you. So I want you to listen very carefully because this is so crucial. It's something that I wish I could tell every single new instructor. You need to, before you even start applying to studios to work for, you need to figure out what your values are as a Pilates instructor. I'm sure you figured out your why. Like, I love Pilates, it's fun, it helped me get back to my body, but figure out what your values are in a fitness context, in a group fitness context. So for example, are you somebody who really values inclusivity and you want that to show up in not only how you teach, but the clients you have an opportunity to serve? Are you somebody who really values friendly environments? Are you somebody who really values contrology and Joseph Pilates and staying close to the classical repertoire? So figure out what you truly value when it comes to Pilates, because that will ensure that you are only applying to jobs, taking jobs at studios that align with your values. And this is crucial because there are going to be a lot of studios that are misaligned with your values and aren't a good fit. And if you don't have a clear sense of what your values are as a Pilates instructor, you will not be happy there. Trust me, there is no way for you to be happy at a place that does not align with your values. So spend some time reflecting, journaling, thinking about what you really value when it comes to group fitness, when it comes to Pilates. What is most important to you? What do you want to represent? What do you want to embody? And make sure that you're only applying to studios where you see that embodied through the instructors, through the clients, through the events, whatever it may be, but get really clear on what your values are. This last piece of advice is a bit related to values, and this advice is to really know what your boundaries are when it comes to the amount that you want to get paid, knowing your worth, and also your time. So how much do you really feel like you can commit as an instructor? Because those are two things that will lead to burnout so quickly if you don't have a clear sense of self and like what you want your boundaries to be as an instructor. What does your schedule look like? Are you working full-time in addition to teaching Pilates? Is it realistic for you to look at studios that want you to have a minimum of 15 classes per week? Or is that maxing out what your boundaries are? If you said your boundaries are, I think I only have like 10 hours of free time, keep in mind that teaching does take time outside of physically teaching. So 10 hours quickly turns into 20, especially in your early stages when you're doing a lot of practice and prep. So just keep in mind, like, what are your boundaries when it comes to the amount that you are teaching, and stick to those boundaries, not just in the hiring process, not just in finding studios that are like, okay, we're fine with you working 10 hours a week here, but also in subbing culture. You can very easily burn yourself out by continuing to say yes when you start this new job because you're so excited. So stay clear with what your boundaries are, especially when it comes to your time. Protect your time. Obviously, be a good coworker. Like, there are times when you'll need a sub, so be mindful of that, and you should chip in and sub for other people. But don't push your boundaries when it comes to your time. Do not burn yourself out too early and make yourself too jaded about this job. It is such a beautiful career that you can build, but you have to build it with boundaries in mind. If you don't, you will not be happy. Trust me. And then the other piece is knowing your worth. And this is one that is really hard for people to understand who are entering into a space where they've never worked before. There's not a lot of pay transparency. But a lot of these studio owners will exploit you for your talent if you do not know your worth. So I would recommend spend some time asking people, asking peers, asking other people in your instructor class or your certification class, looking on Reddit, wherever you can, try to figure out what the average pay is for newer instructors in your area, understanding that you'll be on the lower end because, again, you have no experience, you just finished your certification program. But figure out like what the average is and what you are comfortable accepting, and be very grounded in that and knowing your worth and knowing if it's the average of your area, there should be a studio in that area that is willing to pay you that. Don't accept crumbs. I know you're new, I know you're green, I know you don't have a ton of experience, but that does not mean that you can be exploited. Now, I'm not saying, again, you shouldn't be asking for the top of the spectrum because you don't have that experience, but you also should not be accepting minimum wage, in my opinion, for a lot of these studios who are willing to just pay you minimum wage. So be mindful of knowing your worth and how you enter into these negotiations. Also know that there's different types of ways of getting paid. There are really 3 models that I see used most often in the industry. Rev share, which is probably the least common, and that's basically on how well the studio does. You get bonuses kind of based on that. The second way is a flat rate, which is just like $30, $40, $50 flat. These should be different, in my opinion, for privates versus group. Group, you should be paid less than privates. Privates, in my opinion, you should be paid more, but that's just a bit on pay transparency. And then the last way is a per head model, which includes a flat rate, but then you're also incentivized by how full your class is. I can do a deep dive on like the pros and cons of each of those, but just know that there's different types of ways of getting paid and have a sense of what your boundaries are in each of those, like what your base pay is that you're comfortable with in each of those as you enter into these conversations with these studios. Those are 5 things that I think all new Pilates instructors should know. I believe these are things that you should be thinking about or doing before you even begin applying to new studios or onboarding to new studios. So keep those in mind as you're on your journey to becoming the best instructor you can possibly be. These are things that I really think will make the difference and hopefully set you up to have a very successful long career as a Pilates instructor. As always, like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of me, and I will catch you guys next time.